Now, this is something I've talked about numerous times on this channel. The number one factor that determines how much money you can make as a driver is your location. Now, this is Ridester's 2020 Independent Driver Earnings Survey, where they reviewed a bunch of analytics that drivers submitted to them in terms of their data, how much money they're making, et cetera, et cetera. They do this every year, so they're constantly releasing this every year in terms of how much drivers are actually making. As you can see, New York City has become the best paying city for Uber drivers in the wake of the city's passage of the new TLC regulations, mandating a pay floor and encouraging cutbacks on the number of drivers. This is why I've said numerous times that when it comes to your location, it's not just the base fare and stuff like that. It's sometimes that state and that city's rules. You know, California just passed Prop 22. That's a big thing that affects some of the pay of drivers, right? And as you can see here, UberX drivers experienced a 38.46% increase in earnings. Uber is paying more in driver incentives and bonuses, which will be cutting into their bottom line, et cetera, et cetera. So looking into this, as you can see, Uber drivers in general are making more. 2018 versus 2020, this is the jump. So drivers in general are starting to make more money. As you can see, Uber pays more bonuses in 2020. At least at the time of this video, because it's 2021, they're paying a lot more bonuses as well, just to get more drivers on the road. Tipping nudged up 0.5% and a little more than 7%. That's one thing I've noticed too. I feel like back in the day, you never tipped an Uber and Lyft driver. And I remember when I first started driving, it was weird when someone would say, hey, can I give you a tip? And I'd be like, I mean, you can, you don't have to. You know, I didn't really think about it. Now I think it's a lot more common to tip an Uber driver and a Lyft driver. And it's still weird to me that before you always would tip a taxi driver, but never tipped a Lyft and Uber driver, at least in the beginning. Now it's becoming more of almost a commonplace that you tip every single time you drive. The best and the worst places to work. The main point of this video, showing you, and as you can see here, I'm gonna scroll down because I know they have it in bigger lettering. Right here. Okay, so again, I don't know why this is so small there. Now going down here, the best earnings when it comes to the city is New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New Jersey, New York State outside of NYC. You can see this is how much they're making. Now going down here, the worst earning states, I've talked about Ohio a bunch of times, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Florida, and South Carolina. Now you may be wondering, what does this mean for you? I mean, if let's say you live in South Carolina, does that mean you should move all the way to New York City to drive? Well, I mean, if let's say you're that big on driving Lyft and Uber, maybe, but I mean, not really, right? I think this is a very kind of unfortunate thing, as I said before in numerous videos, that if let's say you're in South Carolina or Ohio, that's just the way it is, you know, and it's kind of unfortunate in that case. And this is why I suggest to a lot of drivers, especially right in the beginning, always drive part-time. Drive during the peak hours. Kind of test the waters. For example, I said this already in a couple videos, talking to a driver in Nashville, he drove from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. on a Friday and Saturday. On average, he'd make about $700 to $800 in that 12-hour shift, usually around $800. Now, when looking at this article, Nashville wasn't mentioned at all. However, he made really, really good money. And this is why this is constantly changing based off the state's rules and regulations. Like I mentioned before about New York City, this is just constantly changing. And so my biggest and my best suggestion is that, well, yes, this is a good rule of thumb. Again, if you, let's say, live in South Carolina, don't jump into Lyft and Uber full time. If you live in New York and you want to, let's say, jump all in and go full time, you might have a better time, and at least the way the analytics are looking, you're probably going to make a lot more money. However, you still don't know at the end of the day. And this is why I suggest that, one, keep in mind your location really does determine how much money you can make or not make, but also drive part-time. Test the waters. Maybe you live in one of those rare areas in South Carolina or Ohio that, because of the way the surge pockets work, because of the base fare, maybe because of new rules and regulations, maybe it actually does pay significantly more than this Ridester survey is saying. Because you never know until you actually hit the road. You could drive and be like, wow, I'm making great money part-time. Maybe do this more. Maybe switch to full-time. Or, on the flip side, you can start driving part-time and be like, oh, you know what? I'm making nothing. I have to explore something else.